Uh, my name is Aquila Mbaki. Reverend Aquila Mbaki. I strongly, I'd like to say that I follow what Fred Wesley just said. And I wrote a letter which was published in the Fiji Times, and I called the Fiji Times a newspaper, and the other paper I called newsletter. And that was published in the Fiji Times, and that's still an issue at the moment, that the Fiji Sun is a newsletter, and the Fiji Times is a proper newspaper, to's and fro's, and that's it. So that was published. The other thing is, I got as far as court cases, but I tried to get a dialogue going. For instance, we published what we call the red booklet on the 2013 Constitution, hundreds of copies, and that was banned, the red booklet, and there was a court case that followed, but the fact that it was banned, distribution, I had a chair of the Lao Provincial Council and took cartons of copies and distributed them in the Lao Provincial Council. So you see there's a public urge to hear what is the truth of the matter. And that goes on all the time at this time, yes. And I was, in the Fiji Times, once I was pictured as putting my hands on my mouth like that. And that's, I was advised by my lawyer, international lawyer, not to speak to the media. It got that far. Don't speak to the media, because the media will put you into trouble. I just want to quote that, instances of how I was affected personally when I was working, I was CEO of Citizens Constitutional Forum for years, and I retired now, so I'm not as outspoken as I used to be. Thank you.
Should we go to Natasha in the back, and then I give floors for responses.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Natasha Khan from University of the South Pacific. My comments or questions were three. In fact, one was, I'm curious who made up the panel at the tribunal, who were in the past tribunal we had, and who were part of the panelists or part of the tribunal, or whether any CSOs were there, or did we know people who were more aligned to the previous government, who were the individuals? Secondly, Fred, thank you very much for sharing that individual, very emotional, personal account of it. Anare and I are colleagues at University of the South Pacific, but we also wear the hats of Pacific Human Rights Defenders Network, and I would like to reach out to you guys if anybody, I think it needs to be documented. These stories need to be documented because there's sort of an amnesia in the population of these things may or may not have happened, and I think it needs to be documented for posterity, and also that we can learn that this never repeats again. Thirdly, my concern, and we've been talking about it in the past as well, is how do we train the new journalists who have worked under self-censorship almost all their entire working life? How do you go about training them? Solen may be able to answer that better, because there was so much fear in reporting, so they are used to that, you question yourself whether we want to put this out there or not. How do we change that? Because this is very new for most of them. For the first time, they might be able to report freely. Thank you.
Okay, I'll respond to the first question that you had on the tribunal. According to the Act, the tribunal was to be made up of, we presume, one person who was qualified to be a judge. But it is important to note that in its 12 years of existence, there was never a need to convene a tribunal. So the tribunal was never established, didn't ever hear a case, right? And in fact, this is something that I had also been frustrated about to an extent, because even though there were news media like Fiji Sun that were quite blatantly breaching certain sections of the Act when it came to fair reporting and so forth, but the challenger parties or the opposition parties at that time did not really lodge formal complaints. So they didn't really make the authority walk. So there was never a need to convene the tribunal. And then later on, it was hailed by the previous authority as something positive. That look, we have never had to, sanction anybody under this act.
Yeah, I'll just quickly address the question on training and development. One of the reasons given for the act, for the necessity of the act, was because the media sector lacked professionalism and there were too many ethical breaches. And the irony is that throughout the duration of the act, there was hardly any activity or emphasis on training and development. We looked at the consolidated annual report. There was zero budget for training and development, it seems. So most of the training was sort of like contracted out to external organizations, foreign donors, and that sort of thing. So on the one hand, there was this keenness to make the media sector locally owned, but there was no effort to take local ownership of training and development. There was no sort of willingness as well to make any kind of investment in training and development. So most of the training and development in Fiji and the Pacific is at the behest of foreign donors, which is really good. They provide a really valuable service and they're integral to the development of the media in Fiji and the Pacific. But we should also invest our own funds, right? The government should also put in some funds in training and development rather than be totally reliant on foreign donors and trainers, because they have their own priorities and they have their own agenda. For example, I haven't seen any foreign donor focusing on maybe conflict reporting, right? Which is really crucial in countries like Fiji and the Solomon Islands. Our journalists, I think, so if you're talking about training uniquely suited for Fiji and maybe countries like the Solomon Islands, conflict reporting. Also protections for female journalists. All these are really crucial. We did a research and we sort of discovered, this was an open secret confirmed by our research, very high levels of sexual harassment of our female journalists. Right? All these years and decades, they were an unprotected and vulnerable species. I don't see anything in all these foreign donors addressing issues such as that. Right? So more than 50% of journalists in Fiji and the region are female. And no wonder how much of training and development budget is devoted to females. As I said, they are a really vulnerable group. Our training is not just university training. There needs to be in-house training as well. Civil society organizations and also women's group, they need to get behind the training too, right? Because the media organizations are not financially viable to undertake training on their own. They need a lot of support. Right now, this training seems to be ad hoc. I think we need a more streamlined and organized position as far as training is concerned.
Yes, good morning in Bulavinaka, Marina level of Family Pacific, which is a feminist media organization. We support a diverse network of women in terms of amplifying their voices, not only within our influencing work, but also within our movement building work. My question is more to the Honorable Attorney General in terms of the shrinking civil society spaces. Family Pacific is also a member of the NGO Coalition on Human Rights, and as well as the Fiji Women's Forum. And my question would be is how is the coalition government looking at the status of the MIDA Act and the Media Industry Development Authority? How is the government prioritizing a review of even its existence in our country as we pursue a genuine and true democracy? And lastly, in its review, if there is a consideration around diversity and inclusion in the community or groups that comes to the table. Naka.
Thank you. I thought I've made my government's position on MIDA is very clear. It's been stated by the Deputy Prime Minister, and I've re-emphasized it again today, that it's an urgent matter, that either whether it's review or total repeal, that is a matter for consideration. Sitting down today, first of all, I would like to, on a personal level, Fred and Satish, I sympathize with what had happened. I cannot furthermore believe that the past administration can go to an extent that affect the lives of journalists in Fiji. Any right-thinking lawyer and the President of Law Society will agree with me. It would be discussed. That's the word I use in the legislation. And the manner of consultation, now that I'm made aware this morning, 2 hours, that is not the proper way to draft a comprehensive law that is going to affect the media industry. And on a professional level, as the Minister for Justice and Attorney General, I sympathize with both of you. That is not the direction that we will go. We promised to the people of Fiji we're going to give freedom back, reclaim freedom, and that starts with media freedom. I guess we'll have to just wait in the coming weeks and months for that to come to fruition. In terms of diversity, yes, diversity is also an integral part of our policies. You may have noted the acting commissioner of prisons or correction is a lady. The acting commissioner, the acting SOE is a lady. That shows, demonstrates government's commitment that women are equally responsible and in status as that of a man. That is the commitment I can give you today. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paulo from Transcend Oceania. I'd like to thank Dialogue Fiji for the invitation to be here, and thank you to the panelists for the presentation this morning. I am emotional to hear the story from Mr. Wesley as somebody who had experienced similar things in 2000, being taken up to the camp and being questioned for some things I did not believe would happen. But I thank Mr. Wesley for actually telling the stories and sharing the stories from the two officers who were treated similarly as I had experienced. My question really is about what has happened and what has been done to address the traumatic experiences of the two officers and other personals who have gone through the same experience. Perhaps it's also a question to the Honourable Attorney General about what plans has the current coalition government have in place to address the traumatic experiences of the past in Fiji. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the remarks. Again, it hasn't been an easy journey. The two colleagues that I've touched on, they are not the only ones. I have senior colleagues more in the newsroom who have their own stories to tell. Stories that are not pleasant to hear. And again, you know, it has been a traumatic experience for a lot of people. For me personally as well, being their leader. But again, we live in a country that sort of embraces challenges. We are a resilient people. And this resilience is demonstrated in a lot of factors of our life. When there's a natural disaster, Fijians are known to be very resilient, and how we come together, how we unite and overcome challenges. My staff, they've sort of lived through this and slowly have overcome the challenges that they've gone through But you are right. There is a need for us as an organization. We are slowly appreciating that and understanding that there is a need for us to be going through trauma counseling, something that I'm sure is done abroad. But again, it's in Fiji, we sort of don't appreciate these factors, don't appreciate these, the psychological impact on the lives of our people. But again, you have just reminded me about the importance of that, and it's something I'll have to be stressing as well. Thank you very much for raising that.
I echo Fred's sentiments. Just like for us, because there's been so many upheavals in the country, and the threats, intimidation at a personal level, us at CFL first, we always took this stand that we should never turn the camera on us, because we are about the people, not us. So we're just a medium to ensure that the information is shared. But as more and more incidents continue to happen, we as editors got together and we said we have to tell our stories. And a lot of people don't know our stories. The visits of soldiers in the middle of the night, all of a sudden the door knocks, is this Vijay's house? And the family is inside. This past year, my wife and kids had a plan, if I got a visit, what should happen. They knew what to do, because they could feel it. The attacks were getting frequent. Even in Parliament, our names were being called out. We were being ridiculed right up to the last day of the election campaign. Lies being told that I'm a member of the National Federation Party, and the continuous attack. So we have mental health sessions now at work. It's part of our risk management, because we have turned from saying we will not turn the camera on us to we have to look after ourselves. And it's been a journey, because, as you know, most of you have been the audience and been affected by it, but we have been in the front line. And what you see in the front line is what we take out every day for the public. There's other things that happen behind the scenes, which we've never talked about. And that's something that we have started to address. And it hasn't been easy. For some of us who continue to stay in the profession for 25, 30 years, we've got a lot of battle scars. But we love the profession, here to stay. There's some who have come and gone because the pressure is too much. And that will continue to happen, I think. A better law that does not have that restriction or limitation may make things easier.
You all have stories to tell. Honorable Prime Minister has a story. He was discarded, taken to court. He is now the Prime Minister. I have a story to tell. I lost my job when I made a decision on 15th of April 2020. And it's about really resilience. This country is built on that human spirit fighting back. Yes, government may take some actions to ensure that restoration. In my capacity as Attorney General, I publicly apologize for the actions taken by my previous administrators in terms of media freedom. A lot of people were victimized, but let's move on. That's the spirit in Fiji, Vinaka.
Hi, sorry. Good afternoon. It's not a question, it's just more a comment. My name is Wiley from the Fiji Law Society, and I just wanted to commend Dialogue Fiji for putting this together, and for all of the stakeholders, the media organizations, and of course government for participating in this. I've come here to pledge Fiji Law Society's support to the process that's being talked about today. A strong democratic country requires a strong and free media. I think as the Washington Post's banner puts most accurately, democracy dies in silence. And I think just listening to Fred's stories, harrowing stories today, just reminds us all that the legacy that this legislation brings was about imposing that silence. So any process by which the free voices can be brought back to the media, we support. And we'll be there with you. And we're really glad to see that there is going to be very broad consultation. We want to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have two more questions, three more questions. Could I ask you to, we have all the questions and comments at once, and then I let the panel respond one more time, again in interest of time.
Pulavinaka, everybody. My name is Amitesh Prasad, and I'm the program manager for IFES, the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. It's a new CSO that is based in Suva and works with various stakeholders on electoral management, and also very closely with CSOs on media empowerment and media awareness. I'd like to echo the sentiments of the Fiji Law Society, saying that IFES also is very keen on putting our foot on the door and helping this process where we can all work together and making sure that first the Media Act is balanced. First, that it makes the level playing field for all media organizations to participate freely in exercising their duties. So, and secondly, for the Media Act to be consultative this time around, the best thing about making a mistake is that we should learn from it, right? We did not consult widely previously. Let's learn from that mistake, and the people in the room, all present here, would agree with me that there is a need for greater consultation should the government proceed in this direction, whether it's a repeal or whether it's a review, however it's the government's prerogative, but in any process there should be a thorough consultation. My third point is to the Honourable Attorney General. We've heard him, and my specific question is there a timeline that the government has decided that from thereafter there'll be a all hands on deck approach on the Act? Nilesh and the team have started the ball rolling. Perhaps an indication from you, sir, as to are there timelines in which the government would start actioning the review? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Daniel, and I'm a former radio announcer for Radio Fiji One, and a former TV producer for Fiji TV. And I was one of the person that used to write onto letters of editor to Fiji Times. And my last published was about the previous government, about the Ngoli bill. And after a few days, I was taken to the barracks, and I was really tortured from there, but nothing else happened from there. But I wish that after today, everything that happened to all individuals about the media should be taken into task. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Mosmi Bhim from the Fiji National University. I have 2 or 3 points to make, I think. The first one, I wish to talk about the case of the prominent lawyer who was fined $120,000 for posting criticism of the former Attorney General and the former Prime Minister on his Facebook page. And the media decree was not used to determine his fine, nor was the online safety bill that was in the draft process at the time. So what law was used to fine him and such a huge fine, $120,000, which seems unjust. And now that the government has changed, will cases that seems to be unjust, unjust sentences, that will they be reviewed? How do people seek justice again for sentences that were served that appeared to be unjust at the time? And with regards to the case of the Fiji Times, of course, there's the cases of staff, senior staff who were forced to leave their jobs. Netani Rika, Sophie Foster, etc. And of course, I know the list goes on and on. The second point is addressed to the Attorney General. It has to do with the Electoral Amendment Act that was rushed through Parliament last year. I believe in September 2014. September 2022, I believe. It was rushed through Parliament, and it was just in the lead up to elections. And that act, that amendment also restricts opinions, polls, and surveys. It not only affects media organizations, it also affects academic research. So I think that amendment should be repealed in its entirety. There was no consultation done about it, and I do hope the government will look into it as a matter of urgency, because it not only restricts media freedom, it also restricts academic freedom. Yeah. Thank you.
Vinaka, I'm Naina from Itoke Trust Fund as their comms specialist. Firstly, I'd like to thank Dialogue Fiji for this platform to be able to come together in a room and discuss issues that has been long burning in our previous administration. I don't have a question. I just have 2 points. The first, I'd like to concur and thank Mr. Fred Wesley of the Fiji Times and Mr. Vijay Ryan for availing yourself to be here. And I vividly remember the events that's shared by Mr. Fred Wesley about the senior journalist Felix Chaudhry, as I was back in the Western Division at the time. Secondly, I'd like to propose, if all is with me, I think the journalists, media advocates, their issues, their stories over the years, I think it's only time and it's only proper that we accord them with an annual awards or Fiji Media Awards. That is, in that way we can recognize their efforts, their fights, and also we can also remember those that have fallen before us, especially the great Mr. Sir Alan Lockington. So I'd like to propose, if the current administration can consider, we organize an annual awards for the Fiji media industry to be able to recognize their efforts. Vinaka.
Vinaka Vakalevo. I would let first Attorney General to respond to some direct questions, and then final comments for all the panelists. Thank you.
I think that we have made it plain clear that we're going to take a different approach from the previous administrator. So rest assured, we not be trying to victimize or punitive in as far as the work of journalists are concerned. In terms of, that also goes to, may I say, contempt proceedings. All I can say, we take a different approach, an opposite approach from the previous administrators. Thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to quickly respond to Moshmi Bhim, because something that you've said has, potentially pointed out another element which has repercussions for freedom of expression. The case that you mentioned, that was not a criminal proceeding, that was a civil case that was brought against the lawyer that was subsequently fined. So that was pursuant to the Defamation Act. You know, the act, of course, is pretty archaic. Perhaps it also needs to be reconsidered by the new parliament. One of the criticisms of the Defamation Act 1971 of Fiji is that it somewhat favors the plaintiff. So, for instance, in a lot of other jurisdictions, people have privilege to criticize public officials. But that privilege is not afforded under the Defamation Act 1971 of Fiji. And so that act can also be used by public officials to stifle criticism. And I think, you know, that is something that needs to be relooked at.
Yeah, again, from our side, we just reiterate our stand that we'd like a majority of the Media Act in its current form gone. And definitely in relation to content regulation, I think that all of that can be repealed immediately. If there's others to be left for some further consultation, we can discuss that. As I highlighted in my presentation, there's some connecting laws that affect us though. It's not just about the Media Act. Our whole existence, for example, is under the Broadcasting Act. And all the broadcasters are governed under that. Licensing. We wouldn't want to go backwards in relation to getting 3 to 6 month licenses as one of the broadcasters had. And that we were sitting right on the edge when our license was up for renewal, you know. There were a lot of praise that was said that time, believe me. And the other issue is about, I think someone touched on training and development awards. So the Fijian Media Association continues to have regular training and upskill training with our partners abroad as well. For the donors who are here, we welcome any support and assistance. We now have homegrown trainers. Most of the skilled editors and news directors are providing the training rather than someone just comes for maybe 1 or 2 days and flies out again and ticks the box. We're trying to move away from that because the skills and experience are in-house now within the country. And the sharing of knowledge needs to continue. And we need to make sure that this profession, you require a lot of passion. It's not just about getting the paper. If you don't have the passion, you don't have the drive, you don't care about issues that affect people on a daily basis, then nothing will happen. You know, people will just do superficial stuff, just scraping the surface, and it's about building that. So we are on that journey, and we are a resilient country with resilient people. Anything that we discuss today, we're not talking as victims, we're talking about we've come out of that and we'll make things better for the people. Because at the end of the day, we exist for the people. And we are only as strong as how the environment can be created for more freedom. So if there's more freedom with the responsibility and making sure we have adequate laws, we can achieve more. Which is also connected to things like the freedom of information laws, which has been talked about. It's within the Constitution, but has not been brought to Parliament. That will even give us more access to information to cover things. It's sometimes very hard to get documentation when you're trying to follow up on what's going on. So all this is connected to our work, and hopefully, as we've said, that the discussions have started, and we are at the table, and definitely something positive will come out of it soon.
Yeah, I think we into closing remarks. I'd just like to thank each one of you. The questions that came out and I'll just respond to something that Wiley said. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Fiji Law Society for backing this move. Wiley will know what we went through. He was part of our defense team, so he knows the issues, the challenges, the heartache, the constant reminder that there was a very real possibility of someone actually going to jail. So that's something I like. I like reality, people giving it the way they should. So again, thank you to the Fiji Law Society, and thank you to each one of you. And I'll also take this opportunity to thank the people of Fiji. I'm sure we're all going out, some of us live. Thank the people of Fiji, and I'll round this up with a little piece. I took a stroll down to Palm Court for some sandwiches. And just before I reached the Palm Court, there was this gentleman who was standing outside the BSP office. This is, I can't remember what that building is. He was standing there with his wife. As I walked by, he looks at me and he asked me, can I have a word with you? I said, sure. I stood up, we shook hands, and then he said, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being our voice. A lot of us want to say a lot of things. A lot of us want to voice our concerns about issues, but we did not have the courage to do that. You guys did that for us. Thank you. What I'm trying to say is this. We realize the seriousness of the roles that we play. We realize and appreciate the fact that people need a platform to voice their concerns. And it takes courage to do that. And I'm thankful for people who over 16 years, and one of them is Nilesh, Dr. Shalendra Singh, that they had the courage to put their names to comments, their names to statements. And there are others. We have a little tag that we have for the letters to the editor family, and it's the Fiji Times letters to the editor parliament, where a lot of opinions come out, a lot of statements are made, and the gentleman like the good lady highlighted, Ellen Lockington, was one of them. So this is an opportunity for me to say thank you to the people, and also to reiterate the fact that we know we have a huge responsibility to disseminate information that allow people to make well-informed decisions on a daily basis. But with that responsibility, we also realize and accept that there comes a very, very huge sense of responsibility. It should be there, that we have to have this greater sense of responsibility to ensure that information is disseminated the way it should be. Thank you.
Have you heard a final word? No. Yeah, I just want us to keep at the back of the mind, our minds, our reality, that we are a fragile society and we are a transitional democracy in which media freedom is strongly linked to media responsibility as well, maybe more so than in mature democracies. And that in turn is linked to training and development, as well as the financial viability of news media organizations, so they can compensate their journalists fairly, as well as retain their staff. As I said at the beginning of my presentation, media freedom is more complex than meet the eye, and I hope going forward we also address all these other issues. Thank you.